Last week, SCOTUS issued a massive ruling on universal injunctions. Now, Justice Jackson stood alone in her dissent, which was ridiculed by basically everybody. In fact, the argument was considered so bad that within the actual Supreme Court opinion document, they insult Ketanji Brown Jackson's intelligence and knowledge and say that her arguments don't adhere to 200 years of legal precedent, nor the Constitution itself. With the New York Post saying Amy Coney Barrett rips Ketanji Brown Jackson over dissent in Birthright citizenship case. Well, I noticed something else on X. Many people are accusing Ketanji Brown Jackson of actually using an AI text generator to write the opinion itself. Now, I don't know a whole lot about how SCOTUS works. Like, I know there's clerks, and the clerks do a lot of the writing and the research. So the Supreme Court justice is going to, like most lawyers, have staff that help compile and write these things up. And, well, let me just say this. I did a couple of experiments. I want to make sure I'm being as transparent as I can and full disclosure. I don't want to say it's conclusive that it's AI generated. I used some AI checkers, right? These are like plagiarism checkers. And one that I used said that a passage, it's a single passage, I didn't grab like every page, was 80% likely AI generated. Now, what I did was I went into ChatGPT, pasted the passage, and asked it to create, through AI, a mirror image. So I said, using this exact style and the exact length, write the inverse argument. And when I ran that from an AI checker, it said it wasn't AI generated. So it clearly was. And I want to make sure that's clear because I am going to show that this one app says it was AI generated, despite the fact that my actual AI generated was rated as not being AI generated. So who knows, it could be wrong. But I did ask ChatGPT what it thought, and it said, this is likely AI generated, that of Ketanji Brown Jackson's statements, which is interesting because it should have access to it. When I asked about Amy Coney Barrett's statements, it said that it was real and was likely that of, Amy Coney Barrett. And so I don't know, but it would make sense because people are like the justices themselves are saying her arguments are stupid. But let's start here. The actual disagreement they had in person. Here's a story from the New York Post. Amy Coney Barrett rips Ketanji Brown Jackson over dissent in Birthright citizenship case. They say conservative Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett stunned veteran bench watchers Friday with a blunt takedown of liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's extreme dissent in the landmark Birthright citizenship case in which the Supreme Court curtailed lower court use of universal injunctions. Quote, we will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself, wrote Barrett, the court's second newest justice, in a jaw-dropping rebuke of her colleague, the newest justice. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. Whoa! In other words, that's about as smackdown as you get. Now, last Friday, when this ruling dropped, we had Will Chamberlain, and he's like a lawyer. And it's funny when you get a lawyer making jokes because these guys, especially Will, he's a very academic guy. And he's like, oh, she's insulting liberal jurisprudence. And it's like very academic, right? But we were laughing our asses off at how stupid Ketanji Brown Jackson is. Basically arguing, which makes literally no sense, that a district court in Alaska can issue, say, a ban on guns, or they unban all guns. Say, you know what, the NFA is unconstitutional. And then you have in District Court D.C. saying, no, all guns everywhere are banned, and that both of them must be applied nationally. That makes literally no sense. And so considering it makes literally no logical sense, one must argue, how does a human being come up with this? Let me say this again. 6-3. The Supreme Court said universal injunctions don't make sense and are at odds with the Constitution. Ketanji Brown Jackson argued district courts, of which there are 677 judges, when they issue an injunction, it should apply nationally to everyone and the president himself. Once again, that's impossible. It's like arguing that you both must have the door open and closed at the same time. Be like, no, I'll just stress this. If a court in Hawaii says it is illegal to sell coconut, and then a court in New York says it is mandatory that all stores must sell coconut, Ketanji Brown Jackson's arguments is that both injunctions must be coexisting at the exact same time. It's a paradox. It's impossible. So simply put, Ketanji Brown Jackson's argument is that if a district court rules it so at the lowest level, then the president, the executive, nay, everyone must adhere to that ruling. Well, the problem is, during oral arguments, the Solicitor General of the United States literally said, we were granted a stay and an injunction. We're trying to issue deportations. They issue an injunction in D.C. We argue against it, and an appellate court says, stay the injunction. What that means is Trump wins, go back to what you were doing. Immediately, as was being handed down, he says another district court issued another injunction. So now you have one court saying you can deport and one court saying you can't. How could both possibly be concurring at the exact same time? To which the Supreme Court was like, you are correct, except for Ketanji Brown Jackson, which once again suggests maybe she didn't argue any of this at all. Maybe she simply, her clerks, maybe she was like, I don't know or care. I'm a liberal. Just write whatever liberals want me to write. And the Supreme Court clerks working for were like, let's just ask ChatGPT to draft some kind of dissent. And ChatGPT was like, but their logic is impeccable. The only thing you could do is be illogical. Well, here we are. We have this post. This is hilarious. This is Austin already says, wait, this is real? I legitimately thought this was a sarcastic tweet someone made up. This is from the actual Supreme Court. And it's a passage written by Ketanji Brown Jackson that says, instead, to the majority, the power-hungry actors are ... parenthesis, wait for it, close parenthesis, ... the district courts. Okay, hold on. Maybe, I'm not a SCOTUS scholar, maybe they often write their Supreme Court opinions with ellipses, wait for it, ellipses, then the subject of the dispute. Based on how Amy Coney Barrett wrote her insult to Ketanji Brown Jackson, where she was like, it's at odds with 2 centuries of legal precedent and the Constitution itself, when if she was writing in a similar style, she would say, and I'm shocked to find, wait for it, this lady's as dumb as a box of rocks. No, typically, the Supreme Court justices are writing in a professional and academic way. I tell people on Timcast IRL, if you're going to insult somebody, keep it academic. Don't say they're retarded. Say they're developmentally disabled. You know, it's a better insult, by the way. In seeing this, someone responded, I don't know if this person has Apple amps. They got 20,000 followers. Wait, before I go check myself, do the other justices use M dashes like that or... M dashes are a notorious sign of large language model AI generated text. Before I read what he writes, I will state Amy Coney Barrett uses M dashes in this exact argument is not proof or it's evidence, but not proof. And evidence isn't proof. When you see the M dashes that she uses and the ellipses and the wait for it, it comes off like a low grade AI-generated text that makes no sense. Now, maybe what happened was her clerks used AI to assist in writing this up. And Apple Amps posts this quote, which I believe is an assessment from, it's a big assessment that likely comes from ChatGPT or something, which basically lays out why it seems to be AI. Now, I'll just show you what I found. It says, here's the reasoning behind the conclusion based on common tells. It says, While all opinions are well written and stylistically appropriate for the Supreme Court, Justice Jackson's dissent exhibits several key characteristics that align with the output of a sophisticated large language model. High-level conceptual abstraction over granular legal analysis. The majority opinion of Barrett and the other concurrences and dissents are deeply engaged in specific technical details of legal history and precedent. They argue about the nature of English courts and chancery, bills of peace, and the interpretation of cases like Grupo Mexicano and Scott v. Donald. Now, I'll shorten this. I'm not going to read through everything. Again, my research was not conclusive, but leans towards it may be to a certain degree AI generated. I kind of don't think it is. I don't know. But what I ended up finding was, I tweeted it. I think I can just show you. Okay, so let me just show you this. So this is free AI content director. I just Google searched it. I grabbed a random passage, the wait for it passage that was contentious. And it tells me that it's 80% of your text likely AI generated, and rewrote it to try and make it seem like it's not AI generated, taking out the ellipses wait for it portion. Ha! And so I posted that, and then I asked ChatGPT, and it said this. Based purely on writing style, the text could plausibly be AI generated. Here's why. Overuse of rhetorical devices, phrases like wait for it, are uncommon in formal Supreme Court writing and feel like performative flourishes typical of AI trying to sound clever or dramatic. Mechanical structure. The sentence structure is overly balanced and tidy, almost too clean. AI models often default to tight logical flow and mirrored syntax that feels artificial to trained readers. Citation mimicry without substance. The C ante at X citations are structurally correct but feel hollow, like placeholders, rather than references to actual legal reasoning. This kind of citation mimicry is common in AI outputs trained on court opinions. Tone mismatch. It tries to sound judicial, but the casual sarcasm, quote, the power-hungry actors are ... wait for it, the district courts, breaks tone in a way that experienced legal writers, especially Supreme Court justices, rarely allow in formal opinions. What makes it seem human at first? The vocabulary and flow are consistent with appellate-level writing. It reflects an actual debate in federal jurisprudence, the legitimacy of universal injunctions. It mimics Sotomayor or Kagan's dissenting tone fairly well. Final judgment. More likely than not, the passage was AI generated. It mimics legal writing very well, but shows tellable signs, M-, especially in tone, rhetorical balance, and citation style, M-, of machine authorship, rather than a real judicial voice. If you told me GPT-4 or Claude wrote it with a SCOTUS dissent prompt, I'd believe it instantly. So I don't know. Once again, like I said, with the AI checker I use, it's a Google search. I don't know if it's legit. I don't know. A lot of people are claiming that it seems like it was AI generated because it's so dumb. But maybe it was like the clerks used some AI tools to clean up language or something. It's possible that they wrote out a lot of it and then ran it through an AI as like a checker of some sort, like fix spelling errors, and then it formatted it in such a way that it appears like it's AI generated, or she's just that dumb. I don't know, man. I'm going to leave it there. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone. You know, stay tuned. We got more coming up for you in a little bit, and we'll see you all in the next segment.